I think by definition, innovation these days is open. I think the time where you could control this combination of technologies, combination of possibilities, that's gone. A lot of industries don't stay within their niche. If you see Google developing cars, I bet that 20 years ago BMW or Mercedes wasn't benchmarking against search engine. I think the drive for change and the drive for transformation obviously comes from the sector itself, which is highly competitive, but also from abroad. We have over 500 different collaborations with startups in over 18 countries, I think. Here on the campus we have a 5G incubation lab where people can start testing innovations with 5G technology. What can it bring? What could I do with it? What is important is having openly communicated visions. Everybody in the management team should be able to tell the whole story, and every manager should be able to tell the whole story, even if it's not in their domain of responsibility.
This is CIONET TV. My name is Hendrik Deckers. I'm here today with Koen Vermeulen, who is the Group CIO of Orange worldwide. A very warm welcome, Koen.
Thank you, Hendrik.
Koen, you are a commercial engineer with a specialty in IT. And you started your career 28 years ago as a consultant at the CSC. And then you joined Belgacom, the national telco operator in Brussels. You switched in 2012 to Orange, where you first joined as IT Transformation Director. Then in 2014 you became the CIO for Orange France. And now recently you've been promoted to Group CIO and you're responsible for IT at Orange Worldwide. So Koen, tell us a bit more about yourself. Why did you go into IT? And maybe if you would have not gone into IT, what would you have done?
God knows. No, I'm from the Commodore 64 generation. So the 80s, I had a professor in mathematics who was passionate about IT, and he explained us at noon what you could do with computers.
Yep.
And that's how I got into it, and we started doing all kind of cool stuff. And what attracted me to IT was not that much the technicity of it and how it was constructed and how the CPUs were. was not too much interested in that, but what can you do with it? What can it serve? Making all kind of nice stuff, and then still counting how much bits and bytes were left on your memory, things which all of us have forgotten by now. And that has always triggered me, and I continue to do that. And when I had to make a choice, and if you're 18 years old, you don't know that much about the future, what the future job really is about. However, I knew I wanted to do something with that combination of IT and the more business aspect of it. So that's why I choose the studies that I've done, commercial engineer with IT. And to be honest, I didn't regret it. To answer to your question, what would have I done if I didn't do that? First of all, I don't know. God knows. I would have loved to be a skier, but that's not the thing you can do in Flanders. But so the most probably that I would have done, and what I doubted between the other studies, was doing medicine, becoming a doctor. But to be very honest, the thing that it also intrigued me very much, doing surgery and opening people's bodies and fixing things. That intrigued me, but I didn't like to go to school. I found doing long studies, I really didn't see it. So I limited myself to 5 years of engineering studies.
That was enough.
That was enough, and then you could go into the real world and do things for real. And so it's a choice you make, and maybe the wrong choice, maybe the right choice, God knows. But
well, you made a nice career.
assume it. I assumed it.
So you're now at Orange here at group level. Tell us a bit, give us a bit of context. What is the Orange, the group, the company all about? What are the different customers that you serve? And what is it that Orange does really, really well?
Yeah. Well, Orange, for those who don't know Orange, it's traditionally known as a telecom operator. Today we call it the connectivity, enhanced connectivity, as well serving the retail market, the B2B market, but also the wholesale market. So there's between operators. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of agreements also going on. Next to that, we have also more the IT and connectivity and network services towards the large corporations with Orange Business Services for cloud services, data intelligence services, and system integration business, that kind of activities. And then thirdly, and since a couple of years, we have also developed our financial services with Orange Bank. Orange Bank today active in France and Spain. And very important for the Middle East and Africa region, Orange Money, where we have over 18 million customers. And then, so that's and then we have the cyber defense, which is also quite important activity. We have over 1,200 cybersecurity experts. So this is also.
And the regions that you serve are Europe and Africa?
Mainly Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Okay.
So that's the geographical plate we're looking at.
And can you give us some numbers in, I don't know, revenue, number of people, how big is the group?
So roughly we have 42 billion revenue on a yearly basis. And we have about 13.5, I think, EBITDA margin on or EBITDA results on last year. We have about, if you count all our customers, we have 580 million customers. So it's really spread all over the planet, I would say. So it's a large footprint with the different markets also. The market, as you can imagine, in sub-Saharan Africa is not the same as the market in France or in Belgium or in Spain. And even in Europe, we see differences in the market. So the local presence, and even within France we see it, the local presence of our business people is quite important, because there are differences in the market, although seen from a very long distance. We also it's all about telecommunications, it's all about financial services. We see that the markets are, and also the positioning of Orange is different. In some countries we are the historically or the incumbent operator, where we offer fixed, mobile, and all kind of convergent services. In other countries we are the challenger, we are number 2, with only, for example, the mobile network. And in some countries the mobile business is primarily prepaid, in others it's postpaid. So the landscape is quite different, although from long distance it may all seem the same. So
and the number of people overall?
You mean employees?
Yes.
142,000 approximately.
142,000. I mean, that's a big organization, right?
It's rather big,
So it must be quite an honor to be the group CIO. And I mean, that's an important driving function, I would say, within the group.
Yeah, well, what I'm in charge of is the making sure that the IT all over the different organizations works fine and is governed in a proper way. Obviously, we have local CIOs who are in charge of operation, as I was before for Orange France. France is approximately the half of the group. I was operationally in charge, and the CIOs are really the local presence and the local forces for doing that. Next to that, I have also the development of all the what we call the innovations and the services that we offer on top of the networks. So it could be financial services, it could be communication services, obviously, but also TV, Wi-Fi solutions, so extenders and things like that. That's all that we develop on a group level. That's also on my responsibility.
It must be a very interesting time to be in a company like this, because there's a lot of things are changing. So it's really becoming a platform company and an ecosystem where you have and banking and connectivity and data and television. It's the breadth of services is becoming bigger and bigger.
It's a very interesting market in the sense that competition, at one hand you have the demand, which is exponentially increasing. The demand for broadband connectivity, either mobile or fixed. We know it all. We just want more and faster internet. Internet, data services, ease of use. So on the other hand, we see that the willingness to pay more for that. It's not that it's conceived as being normal to switch from 3G to 4G to 5G and download movies in 2 seconds. That all seems logical, On the other hand, people don't necessarily want to pay for that. And the investments we have to make as operators is just huge. To give you an order of magnitude, we are investing on a yearly basis over 7 billion euros in the networks and other activities, but big chunk on it on networks. So if you have that in a market which is highly competitive, which is the case in nearly all European markets and also African markets, very fierce competition, it's a very interesting business model where you have booming demand, not always recognized neither by financial markets, or not always valorized. The valorization is not always there. And on the other hand, you have the willingness of customers to pay more for these extra services, which is a challenge. So that requires operators to transform themselves, to automate, but also to go for looking for additional growth, because just augmenting your tariffs is not going to work in certain landscapes. In France, we see it's very complex. And that's the reason why we invested in adjacent services, as we call them. So the banking, the mobile banking services, but also additional services that we do in other countries to grow that offering towards our customer, look for growth, and also making sure that we position ourselves always as a premium supplier, so that the customer satisfaction, the service, and the quality of our network is premium, to make sure that we can keep investing in our network and keeping our customers willing to pay for that service.
So the drivers for change and for transformation are customers demanding more for the same, is faster and faster all the time, 4G, 5G, 6G coming up. And growth is an important thing to basically being able to finance the big investments. What other drivers are there still? Is competition a big one?
That's looking from an, I would say, telco specific standpoint. I think in the world of today, it's going much broader. I gave the example of telcos going to other sectors. The opposite is happening too. So I think thanks or due to, depending on how you look at it, to the emergence of technologies and acceleration of different technologies, we see that a lot of industries don't stay within their niche. If you see Toyota designing cities without cars, and if you see Google developing cars, I bet that 15 years ago or 20 years ago, BMW or Mercedes wasn't benchmarking against a search engine. It wasn't benchmarking against Google. They're probably the biggest threat or opportunity, not only for them, but for the whole mobility industry. So with the self-driving car. So I think the drive for change and the drive for transformation obviously comes from the sector itself, which is highly competitive, but also from abroad. And so it's a worldwide movement that is ongoing that requires companies to fundamentally change and to fundamentally rethink and revolve towards new business models and new activities.
What are the disruptors? I mean, what are is it the Zooms and so on, or what is disrupting from, where do you see the scale-ups and the fast companies that could take away important chunks of your markets?
I think the most dangerous ones are the ones you don't see. I think, and I think that's key in the transformation that IT, but in extent so the company has to go through. Due to that evolution in the markets, in the industries, what wasn't possible 10 years ago, 15 years ago on industrial scale, if I think about AI, has become perfectly normal today. Having an intelligent chat that works with a chatbot 10, 15 years ago, maybe if you were lucky and you formulated it the right way, you had an answer which more or less seemed something. Now today in our bank, for example, I don't have the exact figures in mind anymore, but I think we do over 80 to 90% of our transactions through a bot, customer service type transactions. So, and leading to customer satisfaction. Not talking about leading to customer frustration. So what was possible? So I think that changes a lot from the technology side, which makes newcomers may pop up and if they pop up, it may be too late to see them.
Yeah.
So the key, one I think most fundamental changes that large corporations like us have to go through and that we're going through is making sure that we get much more agile. Agile being capable of adapting to what's really happening in the market and not being stuck to what we think. Because the innovation, I think, is the only way out. But if and innovation is on different levels. Innovation is at the level of technology, obviously. That's what we immediately think of if we think about innovation. But secondly, it's about the way we collaborate also, the way we do things internally. And thirdly, I think it's most important, or at least as important, is a cultural change. And it's how and with culture, I don't mean the posters on the wall telling, no, I really mean how the way I define culture is how are things really being done here? How does it really work? Besides the processes, what works, what doesn't work? Changing that into a culture which adapts and processes and technology and having that mindset that allows you to adapt quickly to what is changing in the market, even if it's a newcomer you didn't see coming, you didn't have a 5-year plan to anticipate what would be going on. That's, I think, where you will have the make or break in the future.
So a lot of things going on, a lot of changes, making new competitors that you don't know yet, that could be very important. So disrupting forces. So innovation is, like you said, and it's also your responsibility in the group to be your head of innovation and development of services.
Part of innovation.
Everybody's responsible for innovation
for the services.
So let's talk about innovation, and I would think you already mentioned it, the way to innovate today is to be open, and to create an open culture for innovation. It's to create open processes so that you have the necessary collaborations, and then to use the open technologies and the new technologies that are there. So let's talk about these three aspects, Koen. So on open culture and open people, important is, in a huge organization like this, how do you, in God's name, how do you create a mind shift? How do you change a culture in a large organization like that, besides putting some posters on the wall? So how do you do that?
I think the transformation and changing culture is the key, and it's part of the innovation, because I think it's the most difficult part. I refer often to it, it's like I've never been a smoker, but I understood that getting rid of smoking is difficult. And the traditional approach to transformation is you create a burning platform, you tell people what's in for it, and go for it. I think it's true, but it's not enough. I think it's like, when I said to smoking, I make the analogy, if you say to a smoker, you can get really badly ill by smoking, I think everybody knows it by now, and you can save a lot of money if you stop smoking, burning platform, and what's in it for me. A lot of people would have stopped smoking by now, which is not the case. So what makes it that the people still grab a cigarette in certain circumstances? I think that's the key point, it's habits, changing habits. And changing habits is not something you just declare. You just don't define it top down. And what you do is, I think, and that's the key part, is making people live other ways of doing things by accompanying them on a daily basis. By people who have no stakes personally in it, who accompany on an operational level, on an operational way, due a long time. It's not just a 2-day course about innovation and thinking differently. I think you have to accept it that changing habits, and if you go profoundly changing culture of a company and transforming it really, it takes time. You cannot, I see a lot of people trying to rush it and say, okay, we're going to do another presentation, it's going to the chief of the chief of the chief who's going to drill it down. You won't get it. It's changing the habits of the people, so you have to do it. Yes, it doesn't harm, on the contrary, that the chief of the chief of the chief says it, but you have to accompany it on the floor, on the ground, and accept that it takes time. If we've done quite some agile transformation and throughout the French organization, but also internationally. And to give an order of magnitude, if you really get from a team which is well performing, not badly performing teams, to getting to a certain level of maturity in Agile, I think you have to count between 12 to 18 months. And you just, although it's simple, Agile techniques aren't difficult, just changing the culture, changing the mindset, making sure they really don't act only Agile, but also think and are working in a different way and think in another way, is going beyond that. It's not just putting a soccer table in the room and then having a stand-up in the morning, but really making them think value, making them think customer orientation. That takes time, and I think you have to accept it. You have to be hard-headed to make sure that you don't change cap, that you keep your North Star where you want to go. Continue to pass the same messages. Don't be disencouraged, and continue to go for that goal, because it pays off. And if it's not, it's going to be superficial, and it will go as quick, because culture will eat it. I mean, we say software eats the world. Culture swallows it all. You may have the best software engineers of the world. If they don't have that mindset, if they don't have that willingness to think customer, to think value, to think, okay, what's really happening? My plan that I anticipated of going there, does it really work that way? And how I'm going to test it? That the great idea I have for being in putting on the market in 2 years, how will I test it that in 3 months it's still valid? And that's if people have worked 20 years, 30 years in a certain way, you don't change that overnight. You have to accept it.
And like you said, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Everything. Swallows everything.
So to change culture and to change means that for people you need to change that context.
Right.
And so I think it also starts at the top.
Right.
And it starts with a different kind of leadership.
Yeah.
So do you have at Orange specific programs in place to change the leadership style? And can you give some examples of that?
Yeah. I think I fully agree with that, because it's a Japanese saying, it says the fish rottens at the head. So you can have all of that, and thank you for remembering me, because you can have all of that, what I just said, accompanying people, explaining them what to do. If the example they see of what they consider to be the way to go, because if you're in charge of a company, if you're the leader of the company, you're supposed to be the example. People look at you all the time. They interpret things. So the moment you go, you don't behave as if you talk. Your transformation, your change stops. It's as simple as that. So and it's difficult for somebody with 10,000 people responsibility under his or her responsibility, or somebody who is a developer or a customer service rep with no teams. It's individual changing behavior into teams. And it's as difficult, and it's the same recipes for the leader as for, I would say, a non-leader to go through that. I think on the individual level, it may be even more difficult for leaders to accept that also they have to change. It's always easy to declare what others have to change, changing yourself and changing attitudes, and also it's habits. Changing habits is the most difficult for everybody.
Absolutely, and I mean the new style of leadership is to be more collaborative, to be more authentic, to be more open, and not to have the traditional command and control that in the end was easier. So leading in the new way is more difficult than it was before. It
challenges you, because if you're in charge of let's say a team working in an agile way, 150 people all together, and you do what we call a PI planning, so kind of the start of a kickoff of for those who don't know the terminology, the kickoff of what you're going to do the next 3 months. As a leader, you're supposed to be there and explain concretely why you're going to do. So if you're very exposed to, you really have to know what you want to get for. You're challenged by the teams because they are in the contact with the customers, they're in contact with the reality on a daily basis. So if that disconnect is too big between the people making great ideas in an ivory tower and the reality, it doesn't work. So it's very confronting for people in power positions, where before they could say, I want it this way because I want it, and I don't have to justify myself. No, there you go. We have people asking you, and are you sure the customer wants it? How did we test it? How are we going to do this? And you do it with a team. You don't do it alone, but it challenges you to make sure that you change that mindset, not for I want it because I'm the boss and because I think it's the presidential project that should go through, but does it deliver value? Does it serve customers? What problem does it solve? How can we do it cheaper? How can we do it faster? Isn't there an easy way around? So
I can imagine that it's not easy to get everybody on board. That some people you just can't get on board, and so you have to make some changes as well, both in the teams and on leadership level as well.
I think, and the most difficult, what I've seen in large organizations, the most difficult, and I think it's valid in smaller organizations too, is it's like with a rocket. If a rocket starts going up to the moon or to the space, I think over 95% of its energy is used for takeoff. And it's the same with transformations. It takes enormous amount of time before getting the momentum where people start seeing, okay, this seems to work, there it works, so maybe we should get interested in. And once you get that in large organization, and I think when the moment people really understand what it's about, really understand the sense of it, and not it's something forced top down, but they really understand why, they're convinced of it, they see it, they have their colleagues talking about it, that it's maybe not that bad, it's maybe a good idea and it works great, and we have higher satisfaction from customers, from employees. At that moment, you see that it accelerates. And that's a very satisfying phenomenon, because then you see that the transformation goes much faster than you ever expected. But the takeoff and the the lift-off, I would say, of transformations and to get the momentum can be very frustrating, takes a lot of effort, blood, sweat and tears, I would say.
So, Koen, changing culture is already a difficult thing. The pandemic that we have all been working from home and so on, was that a good thing or a bad thing for changing the culture in a big organization?
I think the fact that we started changing already the culture a couple of years before was, I think, really helpful, because it helpful for getting through the pandemic. I think, however, if you would have started changing culture in a completely everybody working from home kind of environment, would have been more difficult, because I think if you starting change where everybody's working from home is more difficult, because it's about creating trust, it's about creating enthusiasm, and let's be honest, you do that much easier when you have people in a room all watching together than having a 2 centimeter square with the video of somebody's talking. So I think we indeed changed a lot of practices, I would say, with remote working, and I think in a positive way. And I think what we've done, it has been said often, we managed to do in 6 months we hadn't done in the past 10 years. I think that's true. But it's changing the processes and so mindset about teleworking and remote working, and everything has to be physical. However, I think it's the world after tomorrow, where we have hopefully again can talk and see each other in a normal way, will be more about a mixture of both. I think it still will be possible to have physical having people working together in a very dynamic, a very natural way. Of course, combined with remote working and teleworking.
Because technology is changing how we can work dramatically.
I mean, if you would have had this 30 years ago.
But now with this high-speed connections, with cloud and so on, it's
thanks to the telcos.
Yeah, of course. Koen, let's talk about the process side of innovation. Because, we need to change the culture, but you also need to put in place the right processes and innovation labs and incubators and so on. And what are the processes that you have, and Orange in general, have put in place to foster and to drive innovation?
Orange has a very rich history in innovation. We have a lot of research, historically research. We still do it. We have a lot of collaborations with universities. We have patents. I think we're one of the biggest creators of patents in Europe. So we have that history of having
of R&D.
doing R&D,
Yeah.
which is not the same
Yeah.
as innovation, in my opinion. I think that if you look at companies as ours, we have a lot of technologically savvy people. We have people, obviously, network, in IT, platforms. We have several tens of thousands of these people. And if you look where change and innovation is coming from, it's coming from that side. A lot of, I would say, nearly everything of what's happening, what is revolutionizing the world today is coming from technological evolutions and tech-driven. It could be biotech, it could be IT, wise, but it's coming from that. So, and we have a lot of people who are active, who are on the blogs, who are on the communities outside the company. And where before a lot of people tend to put the IT guys and the tech guys as far away as possible in the basement even. That's the guys you don't want to see. Although they are the ones, if it's well run, if it's if they have the right mindset, they have the good attitude, they are the ones who should be able to capture very fast emerging signals. Because the moment everybody talks about it on TV and then you have to get awake as IT or as a tech department, you're too late. You're completely bypassed at that moment. So what is key is getting these people and getting that shift from IT, talking about IT as in general, or tech department as seen as a cost center, to how do you get these guys, how do you benefit from that knowledge that you have, that you tend to put away in the basement? How do you get them driving growth, change, identifying what could be threats or could be opportunities? How do you get them on board? And I think the whole idea about shifting from an R&D lab environment where you had time, let's say in the 80s, because change wasn't going that fast, towards now where change is just accelerating on an exponential level, is that you can't afford to do it on an isolated way. You have to do it, I think, very quickly connected to reality, combined with that mindset I was talking about before, making sure that these guys, when they capture something, you make sure that they can have the opportunity to explain it, to demo it, to test it, to put their hands dirty, to know, to make the distinction between the hype and the reality, so that they become not just the good guys executing whatever marketing demands, but the good guys also driving what could be done. So I think that's a fundamental shift. It's not just putting it on a slide that makes it. This is very concrete stuff that you can do. Everybody knows. I think if you would ask CEOs and CIOs, if you ask them how much does IT cost, everybody can answer. Ask them how much concretely does IT bring to the table on a yearly basis, nobody can answer, or very little. I think that demonstrates the mindset in how much cases a lot of IT organizations still are. We change that. For us, it's different. We know it. And it brings a complete other equation into the relationships, business ITs. Our most mature teams, or what I consider as our most mature teams, you don't see the difference anymore between IT and business. They're completely embedded. They're completely working together. It's not it's IT's fault, it's a business fault. Business doesn't know what they want. And IT guys, they can't. No. The most mature teams we have, completely gone. They think value together, they prioritize as well technical issues as business opportunities together, thinking value customer as one team, delivering fast, and that is key. That is one part, and then the other thing is how do you, to answer your question on the process part, I think you have to be very careful on processing innovation. I think it's not something you can say on Friday afternoon we're all innovative. It doesn't work that way usually. So one of the things we tried to do, and I tried to do in France, was let's do the same as happens in the outside world. How does a startup work? A guy has a good idea and he tries to do some funding, it's that traditional way. We tried to do the same thing internally. So we said, with the 5,000 IT people we had in France, you all have time. You have coins, and
so you introduced orange coins.
Virtual coins. It was just time.
Virtual, not Bitcoin, but orange coins.
Orange coins. Yeah, it would have been a good idea to introduce orange coins and put them on the crypto market.
Yeah.
We didn't have to talk of that. And then so everybody could launch its ID, and on the kind of platform we had, as a kind of market, and everybody could invest their coins on an ID for funding, let's say the prototype, which would cost 15 days of work, or propose their own services. And what we see, and there was no limitations. The only limits I put on was it should be ethical and it should be legal. But for the rest, you do whatever you want. It should be about new technology. That's not about change this field and this application. Therefore, you have the standard process. It's not what I call innovation, but it should be about AI, augmented reality, Internet of Things, big data, things like that. So we wanted to stimulate that, and we had an enormous traction in that. So we had a lot of people really playing the game. And what you see there is that the interesting part in innovation is about basically creating connections between technologies, creating connections between people, and creating connections between people who have a solution to a problem they don't know, and creating, and the opposite, people who don't know there are solutions for their problem, making them encounter them. And not necessarily focus, because if you don't know that your problem may have a solution, you're not going to ask for somebody for it. The same thing, if you don't know that problem exists, you're not going to propose that solution. So the classical process of, I would say, I have a demand and somebody supplies it, doesn't work. So you have to create that ecosystem, that market. Here it was an internal market, to make people talk to each other, to test technologies, to get your hands dirty, because that's the moment you really know what works or what doesn't work. Because if you have to follow the PowerPoint slides, you're obviously often disappointed. However, if you put really your hands on, if you really test it, you see what's coming, you see what's living, you can talk intelligently about it, and you create very interesting experiences. We had cases where you start with a connected aquarium or a connected mirror, which ends up to a drone flying in a data center. So just because people connect solutions with problems in a less regulated way than you used to do in traditional processes. So you should have some process, I think it should be very light, opening, making a lot of connections, and then funding into implementation and getting everybody on board. That's the key.
I mean, you need a process or a platform or you need to create an environment where that is possible. And where there is funding and there is attention and there's money available.
And then you have to make sure that everybody gets on board, because the critical point is testing in an environment which is safe, let's say inside the office walls, it's safe, getting to the outside world. And there I come back to culture, to the way people think and act. If you don't have your marketing department, your customer service, or your legal department with you to test something in the real world before everything is perfect and legally confirmed, you won't get outside your lab environment. So you need to get everybody on board, and that's, I think, a critical tipping point for making sure that you can transform basically your great ideas into reality. So that tipping point is a crucial one, and that I think is the most difficult one, because there you're going large. You're going beyond what you can manage yourself, because you're also in the outside world with regulations, with laws, with opinions, with which you have to be a bit more careful about than if you just do it inside and then test some things.
So basically you need to organize almost serendipity. You need to organize random connections between solution and ideas and people and so on.
Yeah, because it's something you have to see it. If you see people doing a tour and you have to demo it, and then you see people. If you can recognize an image, you can also recognize cables. You can also recognize machines. The developers have, of course, I can. It's even much easier because the machines are always the same. The cables are always the same. But the guy who had this problem with unattended technical buildings didn't know that was possible. So you see that and the other guy didn't even know that was a problem. If he would have known, he would have immediately proposed, but he didn't know, and nobody knew it. And if you see that's going on and that dynamic going on, these two people talking to themselves, okay, show me, explain me. Now you can do this. Look at my colleague because we can add it, and then it becomes very.
And now you have drones flying in your data center.
Yeah, we did tests. We learned a lot on that.
Recognition so on cables and machines.
Yeah,
and so.
we did a lot of cool stuff. Cool stuff, but also that works in reality. We have, for example, typical problems we have is our network. We are not the only ones intervening in our network. You have a network which is operated by other operators, on which other companies intervene, subcontractors. So it's not just you control your network as you used to do 30, 40 years ago. No. There are other people intervening it. Some do a more decent job than others. And problem is, for example, that sometimes people, competitors or other subcontractors, they just deconnect one customer to connect their customers. These kind of things happen, and sometimes these, what we call these connection points, they become a real mess. Artificial intelligence there helps us to just text, take a photo, and the moment we see these technical installations, these boxes you see at the road starting to degrade, artificial intelligence can say automatically, hold on, there's something going on. This is getting degraded, we should intervene right away, and then we can track back what. So it's always integrated in processes, because with artificial intelligence you can do a lot of cool stuff, and we have a lot of experience now with it, but it's always integrated within, it should be integrated usually in traditional processes. Yeah.
So changing the process, creating a context where connections and serendipity happens, and where people have the freedom to innovate is a crucial way of organizing innovation. There are other ways as well, and working together with startups, scale-ups. Can you give some examples on how you do that here at Orange?
I think by definition, innovation these days is open. I think the time where you could control this combination of technologies, combination of possibilities, that's gone. I think so. If you're talking innovation, by definition, you're talking open innovation, being working together with other technology of other partners, working with other partners, with startups. So indeed, we have a lot of startups that we try to incubate, as we call that we like to help. A lot around also like 5G. We have here on the campus, we have a 5G incubation lab where people can start testing innovations with 5G technology. What can it bring? What could I do with it? And we have over 500 different collaborations with startups in over 18 countries, I think, out of the top of my head. So.
Okay. Now let's come to the third aspect, the technology part of innovation, of course, one of our favorite topics. And let's first talk about a bit about open source.
Yeah.
I mean, open source software has seen a huge increase in use. How strategic is open source here for you?
I'm very, very clear on that. Open source for us is a default choice. Why? First of all, I think open source helps you to mitigate a lot of risks associated, what we've all learned the hard way, of buying appropriate or custom off-the-shelf software with traditional vendor models. You have the risk of customization. Usually happens is people say, okay, I've seen something very neat and had a great marketing presentation, and it's more or less what I want, but I still want to customize it. No, for us it's okay to have us off-the-shelf software as a service or even on-premise software, traditionally commercially licensed, but only if there's zero customization, not 10, not 5, 0. So I'm very strict on that. If that's not possible, and if there's no, it should be open source solution. So open source is, first of all, our default choice. The others are possible, but not excluding it. Economically, it's okay, and we don't change it. But open source is key. Why is it key? To me, is that if you buy, and we all had it, and I won't give names for the sake of not getting enemies. but we all lived it where you bought a package, as we used to call it, the software package. You customized it to that.
Yeah.
Then suddenly your supplier, who was your great friend 5 years ago, got bought by competitor,
and there you
who
were.
decided to kill your lovely baby. So then you're stuck. That's maybe the most dramatic scenario, but also the other scenarios where you have you're at a certain point, if you invested in optimizing a certain process, it's good enough. It's not your priority anymore.
Yeah.
You have other priorities. You have limited means. Nobody have unlimited means.
Yeah.
But if you're forced because your thing, which is good enough, or does what it does, and you don't have additional needs, continues to evolve, get out of maintenance, you're forced to do upgrades. Upgrades which are often quite expensive, especially if they're integrated in a larger ecosystem. And that brings a whole set of costs and dependence on external factors that you don't need. Also, and open source is not for free. It's not.
Very successful companies around it,
very
like Red Hat and others.
Indeed, companies who are. And Red Hat, I think they're the inventor of the open source model, where initially nobody believed how is it possible to make money of something which is for free. Well, they didn't do too bad. But I think it's a good example that it's true. It doesn't come for free from one hand that you have services around it, which are okay, but also that you have to contribute, especially as a larger organization. You cannot just consume open source. You have to contribute. You have to have the skills also to have it, because the risk, which I just described with a product not being under maintenance anymore, is the same in open source. If, for example, the community starts to get to
fork away or whatever,
fork away to another technology. However, at that moment, if you have the technical competencies in-house or subcontracted, whatever model, you can still continue to assure your business, and you're not forced into expensive upgrades if you don't need to, because you still master the code, and you still know if I have to do something, I still do it. So it's not for free, but I think it's a much healthier model, as seen from a customer perspective. And it's definitely for us, and for me as CIO, the default choice. That's what I say to the teams. And it requires also effort. It's effort because getting off-the-shelf software in a SaaS mode or whatever, people come and you have vendors and they all come explain to you. Open source, you have to go for it yourself. You have to organize it. You have to look for it.
But of course, you're big enough. You have enough people. You have enough experts also to do that, and also to contribute to the libraries and so on. So
and also our integration effort, because it's true, if you're a small company and you just have one software package, that's it. We have thousands of applications and interconnected and
that's also an interesting discussion. I mean, how do you manage your legacy in an historical company that has been around for so many years, so big? So what's your strategy there? What's the vision there?
I'll talk there about, I'll take France as our main because the situation is a bit different in different countries, but managing a legacy or managing your richness of the past, I can put it this way also. It's basically it shows you how the company works or how it worked. I think it's a very clear point where you see the interactions that happens in the company. You see them reflected in your IT. And as organizations change, IT don't change with the organization. So you see your legacy evolving throughout the years because of historical changes in your processes. And managing what I call technical debt is absolutely crucial, and in many cases it has been, or in many companies, it has been overlooked, because we're always looking at what's the new thing, how I can get.
There's budget for new stuff.
But for managing your shit of yesterday, managing your debt, your technical debt, there's very little thought of that, and of course, the more you accumulate the debt, the more it gets problematic. So we had that situation also in France, as any incumbent and any historical company has. If you have more than 30, even Google has now a legacy. So with every company which has more than 20 years of existence, by definition, has legacy. So what we did is combine, have a very simple approach on mapping our in France over 1,200 applications on one side of what creates value, future value, what is strategically for us, and what is the technical situation of these applications. And then you have a very simple consultant-like diagram with 4 blocks. The things where everything goes fine, it's strategic and it's on modern technology. You invest in it, no discussion. You have the more problematic box where you say it's strategic, but it's built of old stuff. You have billing systems which are key for certain future products, but they're built on technology of the 90s. You should do something about it. And then you have the other parts, which are, okay, it's old stuff, but it's not strategic. You accept it, you manage it, you keep it.
Until it phases out.
Until it phases out a natural way.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, you manage it. You don't pray, you manage. And then you have the stuff you can decommission. Often the thing which gets forgotten, because it's not strategic, so not many people think about it and look at it. It's on old technology, so you just let it run. It consumes energy, it consumes people. And rather than doing an active action to phase out, often it's forgotten. So we did a massive reduction of that. We outphased over 500 applications in a few years to get also funding for upgrading the other systems. But it's something you should get, and that's also in the changes of the way of IT business working together. I said it a bit before, not opposing the business needs with the technology needs. They should be combined and prioritized, because if you have so to speak, a weekly upgrade and a weekly maintenance of your code and you're adapting small things, it's not the same thing as never having done an upgrade for 9 years. If you never upgraded your Mac or your Windows PC for 9 years, the likelihood that you push the button, it works, is zero. If you do it on a regular basis, it will hopefully continue to work, depending on the...
Let's talk about the need for speed. Let's talk about the speed of the networks. Let's talk about fiber.
Okay, that's speed. Okay.
the speed of the networks. You mentioned it. The customers are always want faster internet, anywhere, all the time, at the same price. So 5G and fiber and so on are very, very important technologies that I can imagine are changing the organization here completely. Massive investments that are going in there. What's the situation? Are you is Orange a leader in fiber and 5G? Are you early adopter? You have a good coverage already?
Well, I think again, it's depending on the countries. But if I take France as our biggest operations, yes, we are definitely for a decade now recognized by the regulator, not by ourselves, as having the best fixed and mobile network. So we have the overall recognized the best mobile and fixed networks with fiber. We have a big coverage also of network. It's fiber network in France has started the deployment a couple of years already ago. So now today we have a huge part of the population who can have access to fiber and has access to fiber. So that's definitely.
And what do you see as the most exciting use cases for this speed, for this high speed networks? Where do you see where is this going to change everybody's life, and how is?
I think that the real innovative stuff won't come just from one technology. I think it's always going to be a combination of different technologies where obviously networks are going to be crucial. Speed of networks and reliability of networks also. Security of networks is going to become more and more important. The intelligence also to adapt also the ecological footprint of networks. We often say in some countries people are against 5G. Well, if you look at the electric consumption of 5G, it's a fraction of what it is for 4G.
So you say the innovation is coming off the combination of different technologies, 5G and IoT and artificial intelligence and
I think it's about, we call it ambient connectivity. So it's an augmented connectivity and where you have indeed much more intelligence in your connectivity, much more intelligence in your services with AI, obviously, much more also differentiation of quality of services, which allows us, which is possible with 5G. You can differentiate. You have the famous slicing, as we call it in 5G, which allows you to differentiate speed and quality of service, reliability. But it's that combination. I think few fundamental. It's nanotechnology, obviously, as a fundamental core. It's artificial intelligence, definitely, but it's also, I think, everything, the IoT ecosystem, where basically everything will be connected, everything. But it's a bit the evolution.
Can you give some examples? I mean, in the labs here, what's happening in the labs that you're not supposed to talk about, that will come out in a couple of years, but that you, just between you and me, that you can already share?
Well, it's an open innovation, so so no. In the labs we're having initiatives on mobile finance, on security, on also on IoT, on the way we going to bring content to people on TV. But also, if just one example, if on IoT, one of the challenges is that, especially in houses, okay, that's fine, you need a battery and it's not too bad. However, if you do that in rural, remote areas, for example in agriculture, and you want to measure humidity of the soil, things like that, whether it's sunny or rainy, or in remote areas, you can't just go there every year to change all your batteries, wherever, and first of all waste. So things we're looking at is creating completely energy autonomous objects. We don't do that alone. We do that with universities, we do that with R&D and other suppliers, but that's the kind of things where you say, okay, the moment we get there where you have a fully autonomous, not just a small piece of device, but really a microcomputer, so to speak, which is completely autonomous by either solar, wind, or ambient energy, and is capable of functioning in such a way, in an autonomous way, combining that with powerful networks and artificial intelligence opens you a lot of possibilities. And I think that's the kind of evolution we will see. It's not just one thing. It's not just about 5G or just about.
And you call them zero energy objects?
Well, they always have energy because they won't work, but they're self-fulfilling. So they don't need energy, or they always get energy from somewhere, but they don't need external, let's say, battery or power supplies, but they get autonomous on themselves. So that's the kind of thing we look at. You have the more fundamental, also that's still in its early development, but still promising. Then you have the much more applied innovations too, which we're doing with our customers, which we're doing with, and there are tons and tons of examples, and basically all the cool stuff we do there.
AR, VR, is that going to be a big thing?
I think so, yeah. Especially AR. I think AR combined with, again, speed of networks, artificial intelligence, and AR. Knowing that AI now we can get trained models on simple devices as smartphones, if I may say like that, or other devices. Recognizing objects, giving additional information about content in real time. I think it's going to be something which will get more and more used in traveling industry, for example, walking around in the city and just moving with your cell phone around and get additional comments on what you want. Why not?
Now, it's said that data centers in the world consume quite an important percentage of energy, and that's only increasing. So what's Orange vision on sustainability and the role that the telco a connection organization like yours plays in that? Do you have a vision for that?
It's one of our key pillars. It's really social responsibility, and it's also part of our purpose. It's being a responsible operator, taking into account the ecological footprint, and we optimize that. We do a lot of it goes from recycling cell phones, recycling set-top boxes, and so we do a lot of that. Refurbishing, as we call it. So the circular economy. Obviously also optimizing our energy consumptions. 5G, as I mentioned before, is definitely
much better than...
much better. So the electricity performance or the ecological performance of 5G is much better than 4G because it to say it simply, it allows the signals to be more specific to rather than 4G is everything everywhere all the time. 5G is more specific and allows you to be more, to put it in a simple way, to be more direct in where you and at what moment you
need what.
You need what. So that is definitely, and we want to be completely carbon neutral in 2040.
Okay. Can you, until recently, you were the head of 5,000 IT people in Orange France. Now you have the responsibility of the group for IT. Let's talk a little bit how IT is organized here. And what does that mean here? What network, IT, digital, and over the different countries. So what's a little bit the structure?
Try to be very, as you can imagine, a large organization is not that simple. Try to be very simple. And first of all, when we in the role I have, it's IT and the services. What we call the services are typically the services running on the network. So besides the core network services, we're talking about TV, financial services, that these kind of services. That's part of the scope I'm responsible of. From an implementation technical perspective, the way IT is organized, as I mentioned, our markets are and our history in the different countries is different. The markets are different, so we have local organizations who are operationally in charge of running services, of changing services, of changing.
So you have
IT.
a CIO in Egypt.
I have a CIO in every country.
Okay.
Every country who has a local team, local solutions. So we have, because as I mentioned, the markets are different, the history is different. Some cases we are incumbent, like in France, we have fixed mobile, we are the historical operator. In other countries, we were the challenger. We only have mobile services in some countries, prepaid, postpaid. So you can't just have one model which fits all, neither from a positioning perspective nor from a market perspective. The market in sub-Saharan Africa is different than the one in Europe, and even between countries, there's important differences. Also, competitive landscape is different, so you need to have that proximity. So there's a lot of local responsibility in the organization. I think it's important. The role then is on a group level is to make sure that we have that global governance, we have a global strategy. We create also solutions which can be used throughout the different countries, but we have the overall oversight of what's happening in what countries and try to govern it.
And you're gonna miss that you're not that much operational anymore than in France. I can imagine a completely different job.
I think it's something very important that I try to continue to be, because it's very easy to get disconnected. I could spend my days watching PowerPoints if I want to. What I think is very important is to continue to have your feet on the ground in the reality, having discussions with developers, having discussions with people, getting your hands on the keyboard. In my free time, I still trying to bricolage, as we call it, trying to build things, just not because I want to be the best developer or the best engineer in the world. No, just it forces you and it gives you another grip on things, that maker instinct, that trying to look for solutions, seeing what's possible, seeing what's happening.
Okay.
I'm still doing that.
And what are you working on right now then?
Well, I did a lot of home automation.
Oh yeah.
I built from really everything, home thermostats and things like that. So driven by AI. So so in function of the outside temperature, all kind of thing, but really built from the electronic part until the software layer. So you don't do that because it's efficient. You do that because you learn things from that. Because you could buy these solutions, but if you really build that, if you see what's happening, it also helps you to give credibility towards people. I think if you're in a technical environment,
you need to speak the language.
You need to be able. You don't need to be the expert of the experts, but you need to be able to show that you at least give the impression to understand what you're talking about, so that they can have an intelligent conversation with you, and not, okay, the guy he really doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. You won't earn respect in a technical environment, and I think it's you have to, that combination of the business aspect and the understanding, and I'm very prudent about it because the domain is so large, from a Wi-Fi repeater to building a customer portal. It's a big chunk. Linking gateways, technology on a gateway is not the same as building an HTML page. So I'm very prudent about understanding, but if people know that you're still seriously interested in what they're doing and ask not too stupid questions, and showing interest and really trying to understand how things work, not in order to, but of genuine interest, it creates a certain credibility and a certain, it's important to do your job, because it allows you to also explain certain issues to people who are not technology literate, but it also allows you to be credible towards your people.
So that's your role as Group CIO. But you have two hats on, and the other hat is that you are the head of innovation, development of customer services.
Services for our customers, not customer service in the sense of service reps.
Services for the customers, so the development of these services and the innovation around that. So that's a big group here in this building. What is your role there, and how do you look at that? Because that's a new part in your responsibility now.
That's the part where we develop new services typically for the group, used in different countries. Like gateways, the home gateway, your Wi-Fi, the devices and the software that comes with it, the set-top boxes for your TV, content solutions, Orange Money, the financial transaction solutions. So everything related to services on top of our network, and that we do for the group. Where appropriate, we don't do everything, but when it are strategic developments and things that we use on our total footprint, we are at least involved, or we develop it. Not develop it doesn't mean we do everything ourselves, but we make sure that there's a solution coming out of the plant.
Let's take a step back and look at the role of the CIO again. How would you describe the role of a CIO 5 years ago? What's fundamentally the role of a CIO today, and how do you see that change and evolve in the future?
What I think that a CIO 10 or 20 years ago was, it should run and we shouldn't see them. It was like, the less you see them, probably the much better it is, because it means you don't have trouble. If you see them, it's trouble. To a model where you see the CIO as really sitting around the management table, bringing, of course, still talking about issues if there are, but also thinking about opportunities, possibilities, bringing ideas for growth, bringing ideas for optimization, as a peer and not as the executor down in the basement. I think that's and the evolution I've seen in France and that we pushed for was really pushing IT from a cost center. And what you do with a cost center is you cut costs. The less it costs, the better it is. And it's true for some part of the IT, which is the run, you should manage it as a cost. Optimize. Doesn't exclude the other. On the other hand, you have a big chunk of your budget, which is investments. And investments means, what does it bring? And I had a lot of discussions with my peers in other countries, telecom operators. They all know how much they invest, but nobody could say how much they really got as a return, real measurable return. This is not like IT is important because if it goes down, the company goes down. No, it's concretely, I invested 300 million. Those 300 million brought so much on a 5-year plan on the table, so much EBITDA, so much cost avoidance, so much revenue protection. Then you're talking business. And if you do, because some companies still do 5-year plans, I think. In this world, making 5-year plans is
crazy,
especially if you want to do a plan of it and not a vision, that's something different. But if you have a plan saying this by quarter and quarter, this is what's going to happen, I think you're disconnected from reality. But doing, of course, you need to have financial guidance, you have to know financially where you're going, and you can't ask to people, what are you going to do, your marketing guys, what are you going to do in 2023? They don't have a clue, and it's normal.
And that's good.
And that's good. They know where they want to go, they should know where, but what they're going to do in Q1 2023 on IT, they can't give you an answer, and that's normal. So you nevertheless have to go to give that financial ID and planning input. So you rather do it opposite way. So what we did at a certain point in time is to say, okay, we know we have to go for that much margin increase, that much revenue increase. Historically, what we see, so much of it is thanks to IT investments, because we measure it in a systematic way and in an industrial way, and it gets reliable. So we can do the translation into, that means that we probably have to invest that much in IT. And that's a fundamental different discussion than IT is expensive and you have to cut down costs.
So IT needs to prove, needs to show the return on the investment that are happening, and kind of needs to build a dashboard with the returns.
IT. It's not IT who has to show it, it's business and IT, because basically the investments we do, and it's a combination because it's a ratio. Right? You have an return on an asset. We build the asset as IT guys, and usually the business has the return. Could be opposite too, but generally that's the most standard scenario. So it's the combination. You can't just do that on your own as an IT. If the business asks you whatever and doesn't care about measuring its benefits and isn't important, yes, you can optimize your cost part of it on creating the asset, but your value is still suboptimal. So it's a ratio. It's optimizing the ratio. It's optimizing as well. How do you make sure that business and IT look for value, and how do you make sure business and IT optimize the asset? And I think, so if you say, what we used to do is, and my business colleagues, we had investment committees where if you had certain investments which we approved, then when they were realized, they came back. And it is business and IT who explains the return. It's not IT was expensive and the business, no. There's one ratio, it's one team which explains this is the return we have on this investment measured, controlled by financial controllers. So it's not something we just invent, it's real, it's concrete. And that creates a vision and a sound collaboration between business and IT. It's not opposing them. They have the same objective, create value.
Yeah, business is IT, especially in an organization like this. I mean, IT is business, and you're all in the same boat. There's no difference anymore. It's not us and them, man. No. So let's talk a bit about your teams. When you were to France CIO, you had a team of more than 5,000 people. Now, as Group CIO, all the people in IT, and then innovation is, 25,000 people, or?
Yeah, it depends what you call IT, what you call IT, because in our type of business, it's where is the edge between this is IT, this is network. So order of magnitude, we're talking about, let's say, 25 to 30,000 people.
So huge organization. So how do you manage that? I mean, I'm always stunned about people that are running big teams like that. How do you do that? I mean, what is your secret of management success?
I wouldn't dare to say I have a secret, but first of all, you're not alone. It's not. I don't think it's one. It's not one person who manages. First of all, these are many teams. All the teams I'm talking about, 25,000 people, isn't just one team. There are different teams in different geographies, different responsibilities, different hierarchies. So it's not just one team. To your question about managing a large organization, you need to have. I don't think there's a big difference between managing 1,000 people or 3,000 people. The moment you can't know them all anymore individually, it changes. It's a bit so I think once you passed that thing, I don't think it's that much different, except that, of course, logistic-wise and communication-wise and seeing them all, it's more difficult. But on a pure management level, you can only work with so many people at the same time. So whether it's 20,000 or 25,000 people, I don't think fundamentally you change anything.
You can only closely work with 20, 50, 100 people or so.
And that's you still try to get connected because, but you know it's impossible, and you can't just meet 25,000 people in a one-on-one. It's just not going to be possible. So what is important to me is creating the purpose, creating the vision, making sure that it's extremely well understood, that everybody knows where do we go to and stick to it. The most lethal thing to large organizations is shifting from your purpose or your cap, where you want to go to, shifting every 6 months. That kills everything. It kills even the ongoing business, because people in the end, they don't know anymore. They say, okay, whatever they do there, don't
believe it. We'll come back with something different. 6
months later, we'll come with something else, so something else. So what is important is, I think that having a very clear, expressed vision and openly communicated vision. So everybody should be able, and I've always been very keen on saying that everybody in the management team should be able to tell the whole story, and every manager should be able to tell the whole story, even if it's not in their domain of responsibility. So my HR directors, they weren't IT people, but they could perfectly tell the whole IT story. Not on the technical level, but they could perfectly say where to go. Everybody on the team should be able to express that. So everybody has the same vision. It's collaborated, so it's not something I define. And it's done together. But we all know it's very clear, it's very precise, and we also know at what pace we're going to go. We also need to know how we phase it into time and how we will bring it to the teams. If you have large transformations, which are profound, I'm not talking about we just change something and it's fine. No, I'm talking about large and important transformation. They usually take years. They usually are not done overnight. They require different streams or different work groups or different focus areas in that transformation. What I consider a mistake I see often is that in those large transformations, people communicate everything to everybody. I think people should understand the global picture. They should know where they go to, and then they should know
for themselves.
Okay, concretely, I'm an architect. What changes for me? That the accounting rules change. Okay, it's good that I know, but I don't need to know how it works exactly because it's not my job. You don't go to distract the guy with that. So how do you then bring that transformation in a very concrete way, in a phased way, taking into account that it takes time and that you accompany these people into the transformation? I think that's the key to success. And coming back. When I first started in Orange, and I did call first roadshow on okay, what are the, then I was in charge of IT transformation. I did the roadshow on the different sites. One of the questions I got in a nearly systematic way was, why would it work this way? Or why would it work this time, sorry. And okay, if you're new in the company, the answer is, I don't know why it didn't work, but the key thing is also going back to them. So you say, okay, I will be back here 6 months from now, and we will say where we are. If it could be that something didn't work, it's not the shame, but then we'll correct. But I will be back here. I will be back here every 6 months to make the point with you, adjust where necessary. It's not a plan which is detailed and we just execute and follow the plan. No, we adapt to reality, but we always say where we are, what's the next step, and they know it. They know what the end goal is. They know the different steps we're going to take, the major steps. They see it. We adapt the pace to what the organization can absorb, and what the human can absorb, depending on the profoundness of the change. And that, I think, is a key element in managing managing transformations.
Yep.
Managing the teams, of course, is the team.
So having a clear vision that doesn't change every 6 months, and having a well-organized communication way so that you can get the right messages, the right people in the right
Communication
dose.
in both directions. Making sure that, because if it's rarely the case that your initial plan and what you told initially is exactly the way it turns out. Because usually these are things which take over years, so things change during those years. And you should have the modesty and the sense of reality to make sure, okay, here it didn't work exactly this way, so you're not going to change complete direction. You just say, okay, I need to adjust, I need to adapt, and that's not a problem. And people should know that it's we're not going to change direction, but if there's an obstacle, we're not going to continue to try to hit the obstacle until it falls down. We're just going to make a small turnaround and or make a small bypass to skip it. And that's why you need to have the communication and the return on both sides, and very important, accompany the people on the field. So they have your sense with reality all the time active.
Yeah, to make it sound very easy. So I'm sure it's not.
No, it's not easy, but but you learn it by making mistakes.
Yeah.
It's,
we'll come to that in a moment.
Okay.
Management is one thing, but leadership is another thing. I mean, people work for a manager, but they want to work for a leader. So how would you describe your leadership style? Maybe a good way to ask this, my favorite way to ask this, was how do you think you are perceived as a leader? What do you think people say about you when you're not around?
Well, first of all, I hope they say the same thing when I'm not around as when I'm around.
Let's hope so.
First thing, I hope. And the second thing is that I would not be surprised about what I hear. So I think that, because I think transparency in the team and being able to openly say what you think is key. If people don't dare to say it, there's a kind of sense of terror and okay, no, the boss said this, so you better shut up because it's going to turn out badly if I say something in the opposite way. So I think trust and capability to speak openly is absolutely key. So that's why I would hope that what they say behind my back, as when they say when we're all together, is the same, and I think it's probably going to be the way.
Okay.
They probably say that I'm somebody who dares to put out a vision. I dare to say, okay, I think that's the way we should go, trying to convince people on that, getting them on board. It's very important, because alone you can't do anything in this kind of job. Could be I'm determined. So if we decide, once we got the decision made to go a certain way, I'll do everything to get there. I also have I think they will also say a good strategic and wide vision, not just narrow-minded. So I try to look at it from all angles, not just from one specific angle. I think you will also say I'm human.
After all.
After all. Maybe not the right way to say it, but that I'm accessible. It's, I don't think people are afraid of talking to me. So I'm accessible in the sense of they dare to say what they think, and they're not too much afraid of once they know me. Because if you don't know somebody, you always may be a bit careful, especially if it's in another place of the organization. But once they know me, I think they know we can have a... I also find it very important is that you consider all people equal. It's not because I'm the boss that I'm better than they are. I think everybody has his role to play, and it's not because you play a certain role that you're better or more worth than somebody else.
It's a different role.
It's a different role, and I think that's very important. Sometimes you have to make decisions, and that's okay, but that's your role. But there are other people's role to make decisions, to make to make implementations. But it's I think it was Jung who said it. It's the beginning of wisdom is to understand that every face has another, or everything has another face too. So what they also may say is that I'm sometimes too impatient. I can be demanding. I could also be so impatient fast, trying to push them a bit beyond their comfort zone, which made them feel uncomfortable. Some people may find me also not empathetic enough because of that push and not pampering too much sometimes and being tough and direct. I try to. It's also the reason because I'm doing a lot of all my meetings are in my non-native language, and I'm a Dutch speaker. So, as you know, Hendrik, the likelihood that we can talk Flemish if we drive 100 kilometers, it's rather rare. So everything is here is in French or in English, and especially if you're with native French-speaking people, you should not underestimate. Although I speak rather correctly French, even if you technically say something,
the subtleties.
The subtleties, and so that's also a reason why I try to be direct. Doesn't mean rude. I mean, I'm just clear. Try to be clear of what I mean. Not try to be complex about the explanations. To be sure things are understood. But that may, for some people, be offensive or. Well, offensive. Some people are more sensitive to that than other people. So
depends on the culture.
I think also, and you know, I know you're a fan of MBTI. I think there's a lot of interesting things in these methodologies, and if you take there are other type of typologies, it's a lot of truth. It's basically what you naturally tend to do, and what your natural favorite way of working and acting is. But I think should be very careful also about it.
But let's talk about your MBTI. Okay. So you shared with us, Koen, that your Myers-Briggs type personality indicator, the MBTI, is that you are an ENTP, and you're you're balancing between introvert and extrovert. So it's not always clear if you're I or E. So
it's on the verge.
But it's also typical for INTPs that they can come across as introverts. So it's not that. So ENTPs, extroverted, intuitive thinking, and prospecting personality, they tend to be bold and creative, deconstructing and rebuilding ideas with great mental agility. That's what they do. They pursue their goals vigorously despite any resistance they might encounter. So
that's impressive, Hendrik.
No, but there's a lot of things that you said that really match that. People with this personality profile, their strengths are that they're knowledgeable. I mean, you want to know things. You will still want to build your own home automation things. You're a quick thinker, obviously. Original, excellent brainstormers. You like to be creative with ideas, I think. Charismatic, communication is important, and making sure that leadership is important, and energetic are good points. So I think they all match as far as we know each other already a little bit for quite some time. But weaknesses are, and you mentioned already a couple, that people with this personality profile can be very argumentative. They want to win an argument for the sake of winning the argument sometimes. So that's something that you have to be careful with. They can sometimes be insensitive because we're strong on the, and I've got the same profile, strong on the T, and sometimes, so we need to learn how to build relationships and so on. They can find it difficult to focus and sometimes dislike practical matters. In all of these, where is your biggest development area? Where did you and develop yourself most as a professional? Because you can't have all these weaknesses and be a top CIO.
I think it's you learn it the hard way. I think it's when I started working and got graduated as an engineer, economic background, very rational. And I remember when I was having meetings in the beginning of my career and you're discussing about a project and okay, should we do it? Should we do it? And was in a management position, and then I felt that something didn't feel right, but I didn't have all the factual arguments to say no, we shouldn't do it. Although I felt it, so I shut up. At that moment, I shut up and I said, okay, I don't have the full arguments to say we shouldn't do it, and unfortunately, I was right. We shouldn't have done it. And 6-7 months later, you said, shit, I should have followed my gut feeling.
And communicated your gut feeling.
Communicated
your emotion.
Not be embarrassed about the fact that I don't sense it and that I couldn't put. But it's not easy, because as if you're so much educated on explaining on the rational side with A plus B that it should be that, and the NPV is there, and so everything was green, but it was like the watermelon. Everything was green on the outside, but on the inside it was red. So and you sense that, and now I dare to do that. Now I dare to say, because I learned it, because I know that if I sense something, I say, well, guys, I don't feel it, that area, let's go back to that, let's go. So I don't impede myself anymore to it. So it's something which isn't natural, but you learn it, that it's important to listen to that part of your reasoning too.
So you learn to follow more your intuition and your emotion, and not
intuition was okay, but it was a way to express, dare to express your intuition, because intuition wasn't seen as rational, wasn't seen as analytically, and that's the way you often get educated in school. And
also, very interesting in your profile, I find, is that you have the P at the end, because most of the CIOs that I interview have a big G at the end. They're very judging, and they plan and they organize and they take decisions and they stick to it, and that's how they are happy. But people with a big P at the end, with are more perceiving, they like to keep the options open and sometimes delay decisions because they want to keep all the options open. And that's not necessarily easy in a big organization like that. So how do you manage that?
But it's clear that you have to, that's why I say you have to be careful about the extreme interpretations of these frameworks. You can't put people in 16 boxes. It would be easy.
It's all spectrum.
It's all spectrum. So, of course, as an IT, you have to have a part of processes and planning. It's undeniable. If not, you can speak mess. If your night planning on your batches isn't scheduled, you get big trouble. So you won't be a long-lived CIO. So you obviously have. It's not because you're trying to keep the options open that you don't plan. I think what I consider as a difference is I have a plan, but I don't have the plan. So I know where to go. I know where I want to go. That, I think, the cap, the North Star where I want to go, that I keep, but I'm realistic enough, especially if it's profound things, that planning 5 years ahead what you're going to do, quarter per quarter, week by week, and I have been a traditional project manager in my career, so I have been making detailed work breakdown structures with Gantt charts. And the first thing you know, if you do that the moment your plan is finished, it's outdated. So you need to have it, but don't make it your only guidance. I think that's the important part. And I think in today's world, it's extremely crucial to keep your options open, as you say, because it goes so fast. I mean, I still remember having budget updates in November 2019, COVID, nobody was talking about it. All that update you did for 2020, just 3 months later, you could just put it in the waste bin because everything changed.
In your personal life and also in your professional life, what is it that really drives you? When are you happy? When do you feel good?
I'm very curious. So I like to try new things. I like to learn new things. Like to do new things, discover countries, like a lot of traveling. I'm also competitive. Played did a lot of sports in my life, and so competition is something that I like. In the beginning, when I was younger, it was really competition to win. Now it's more competition for fun. So it's if I win or lose, doesn't matter. In the beginning, when I was younger, winning was very important. Now with age, you get a bit more relative, so it's the learning new things, discovering new things.
So it's a perfect environment then to learn many new things.
It's,
Do you have a personal mantra, a saying that guides you when you, I don't know, need to make a difficult decision or so?
I have mantra. I think a lot of people have it. It's carpe diem, joy of every moment, because life can stop every day. I love life, so it's. But a bit more saying I like a lot is from Nelson Mandela. He said, "I never lose. I either win or I learn." And I think that's a very important thing I found, is that the way you look at things is and trying things sometimes. I think especially in European cultures, we're very afraid of making mistakes. We're very afraid of having a mistake. And I think trying to look at it from a different way and trying to incorporate that also in a corporate culture is I find it very important, is to say, okay, I may not get what I wanted, but at least I learned something from it, and have the reflex of not regretting that you didn't win, but force yourself to say, okay, what have I really learned about it? So, I think
that's a bridge to my favorite question.
Okay,
Koen, what is your most brilliant mistake that you ever made? We all do good things, but we do bad things. We do mistakes, and there's some of the mistakes that we learn. So, what was your most brilliant failure? The most brilliant mistake ever?
I think I make a lot of them. So the most brilliant mistake I ever made. Making the assumption that your intention is also perceived as such by the other. So it's not because you have the intention to say something a certain way or that it's necessarily perceived that way by the other. So it's not your intention that counts, it is what it does to the other. So I think that's the
important learning.
Important learning, where I sometimes say things and then they say, okay, I didn't mean that way. But it was one of my volleyball trainers, and I was very young, who said it to me. He said, it doesn't matter what your intention is. What matters is how it's perceived by the other. So that is maybe one of the very important learning that I learned, and by making mistakes or saying things with a certain intention and assuming that would be okay. Well, it's not, because it's not perceived that way.
Let's go a little bit deeper, and we want to learn the secrets of you.
Oh my God!
No, I'm convinced that, top CIOs, top CTOs, top digital leaders, they are there because they are driven by certain opinions, certain convictions, and also certain values. So what are your core values? What are the values that you live by, and the values that you pass on to your children, for instance?
Yeah. First of all, that transparency is honesty, but also the fact that nothing is for free. I think things don't come for free. You have to go and get them. You have to want them. If you want to do something which is different, if you want to do something which is tough, get the reward. It doesn't come for free. You have to work for it. You have to dare to fall, to stand up, to learn. So that, I think, is very important. Not be afraid of the obstacles. Not be afraid of getting a bit hurt, and still continue to crawl and keep going to where you want to go, despite the counter attacks or the counter fates that you have in.
So you have to go the extra mile. And so that means also that you work hard. You invest a lot of hours and passion and energy in. How do you relax? How do you, leave all this behind and get back to yourself?
I try to keep, and that's very a good balance between private life or non-work life and work, because in this kind of job, it's never finished. So if you can work 12 hours, you can work 16 hours, you can work 23 hours, it will not be finished. So at a certain point, you just have to say, okay, this is it for today. Urgent things are emergencies, of course, you treat, but you cut at a certain point. So I think that is very important, because you don't run. It's not a 100-meter sprint. It's a marathon. It's a marathon you run. So if you just get burned, you can get burned by meetings from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the evening if you want. So it's not efficient. So efficiency is something I take. And I don't know what it is, but I can rather easily switch off.
Oh, yeah.
So,
so you're in business for, what is it now, 28 years?
oh my God, it doesn't make us younger.
You're getting old, Koen. So in that career, who are the important people in your life? Who are the people that you look up to and that you have learned from? Who were your important mentors?
Yeah, I'm very opportunistic when it comes to learning. So I learn a lot from a lot of people. I learn from my peers, I learn from my bosses, I learn from my friends. I try to, if I see things that I say, oh, it's a good idea, I easily pick. So I learn a lot from a lot of people, and I always say I prefer to pick a good idea than invent a bad one myself. So so I do a lot of opportunistic learning. I have a lot of respect. It's maybe another way to for a lot of people also.
Some that stand out?
Yeah, I think people had some volleyball coach. One particular volleyball coach that I appreciated a lot was a very good, was a Brazilian guy with a very good. He was a professor in psychology also.
Also, wow.
So he combined very well the technical aspects of playing volleyball with the psychological aspect of it, and I think I maybe learned a lot, in maybe more by doing team sports than by following academic courses.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you do team sports at an intensive level, where for some people it's their job, it's you see and it's first of all you have diversity of society in such teams usually. You have all kind of people in there from all kind of origins. With important things at stake. For some people it's their job, so you better win because it makes a big difference. And then you see true nature coming out, because sports is also about passion. You don't have you lose a lot of your facade, your screen when you're in a controlled environment, in a business environment. Usually people don't get too much emotive.
Yeah.
In sports and top
it's
sports,
all about emotion.
It's all about emotion. It's adrenaline. It's things. So you learn a lot how teams work or don't work, because that emotion is much more direct and much more explosive.
Yeah.
Especially if you're young, you not have been exposed to that more professional context. You learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
And other people, one of the guys I have a lot of respect for, and I don't know him personally, but it's Mark Hermans, the famous former triathlete who got a stupid accident and got paralyzed. And if you see the courage that this guy has to continue to fight for, to walk again, literally, and in his foundation, you have to be, this is... I have a lot of admiration for people with that courage and that, because basically you lose everything you have. You lose your job. You lose your
half of your body,
which is your job. Which is your. So I think this is very, very, very impressive. If you see these guys continue to fight for it, continue to smile, continue to go for it. I'm sure they have difficult moments. I don't doubt about it, but. I find these people impressive. I think this I have a lot of respect for. And
what's the best thing that ever happened to you in your life?
Oh, I'm an optimist, so no, definitely. I have two beautiful and healthy twin daughters, so that's definitely one of the nicest
highlights.
The highlights of one's life is having happy and healthy children. So and good health. I think it's very.
What are you scared for? What do you fear in your life?
I'm not somebody who's very quickly scared. I think what everybody's scared of is something happening to your children. I think this is natural. I think, but for myself, I'm not somebody who is scared. I hope not to get ill. One day I will probably get.
Well, life is one.
Life is
gonna come to an end.
So that's why I say you don't know when it's going to be, but that's why I think you should benefit from every day and try to live in I always try to live in the future because that's where we'll spend the rest of our life. So the present and the future, not too much in the past, not too much regretting choices you've made. You made them and you live with it and make the best of it. So,
what are you most grateful for in your life?
I think I'm very grateful about the way I got educated with my parents and my family. Very
come out of a good nest.
Yeah. It was
as they say.
Very. They did a lot. They let me do not whatever I wanted, but because it was clear what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. But they let me go to university. They were there. Don't have come out of wealthy family neither. So my father was a teacher. My mother took care of us at home and took care of the house. So it's not that I have two other brothers, so we could all go to college, good education, good environment. We could do our sports. We were supported by that. So I think that the environment in which you grow up is something you have to be careful with, thankful for, and careful for, careful with, because it's not something you choose. It's something you just luck or bad luck for some people, and if you get the luck to come out of a favorable environment, it helps you to get through the rest of your life. So that's something I'm definitely thankful and grateful for. And the other thing is my health. It's another thing you can't control, and some people get ill, and touch wood, but so far good health, and I hope it stays that way. So I think I have to be grateful for that, because it's maybe the most important thing. You only realize it when you don't have it anymore.
In the beginning of this conversation, you talked about that you at one moment had to make the decision if you wanted to go and study medicine or you wanted to go and study IT and business, and you took the way of IT and business. Now looking back, are you happy that you took that way, or would your dream still be to be a doctor and cure people and have an impact on other people's life like that?
Well, as I said before, I don't regret choices. So honestly, I would still love to be a doctor. I think it's not realistic.
But then Dr. House, because you want new cures and you want to find out new things.
Well, I think especially with combining, I think it's one of the great breakthroughs that we're going to have in the coming years. It's the combination of medicine or biology and technology is going to be huge. If you see the speed at which we developed, people, not me, developed the vaccines, it's a combination of fundamental research in biology, how DNA works. It's a combination of IT and technology, CRISPR developments. I think this is going to be huge acceleration, and the quality of the real life of people will evolve in the coming years, I think. And it's again that combination of technologies of IT, networking, biotech, that combines into something which will.
If only we could live another 100 years and.
Well, I think we will very closely get. If I didn't look at it, but I think if you look at the life expectancy. At a certain point, we will come to a point that if life expectancy is increasing every year 1 year.
Well, some people even believe that is something that we can cure, that we can overcome, that some people will live forever. Well, I'm not sure that that's a good idea, but anyway.
It will create other questions.
Many other questions. So Koen, we're coming to the end of this interview, this conversation. Thank you so much already.
You're welcome.
Now, these people that are watching this interview are, many of them are young, ambitious professionals that want to build a great career as a digital leader. And so with your insight and your experience, what's the advice that you would give to these ambitious young professionals?
I think it's one of the key questions is how do you get young people, and especially young girls or young women into technology. I think if you look at what's happening in Europe compared to other continents, we have a underrepresentation of women in tech studies, if you can put it this way, and tech jobs. If you see that growth and evolution is driven by tech, we have a problem in Europe, because if you have only, I think it's about 30% max of women into these more technical jobs, compared to, if you look Asia, it's 50-50, other areas it's also the same thing. It's normal representation, women, there's no reason why there should be one sex being more represented than the other. I think it's a fundamental economical problem. Besides the diversity in the teams, I think it's also a fundamental economical problem for growth in the European area. It's not having enough capacity and brains working in volume, but on these growth areas for tomorrow. Yeah. So I think young people getting in IT, and I know it's very difficult for understanding for people who have never worked in a company and never, if you're 16 years old and they ask you what to do, I wanted to be the guy collecting the garbage when I was 3 years old, because I found it fun being when I saw them passing beside my home behind the vans, I found it fun. So because that's what I saw. IT and what you can do with it is usually not known by 16-year-old people. Yes, they can use the digital natives, but how it's constructed, how it's worked, what you can really do, and all the other things they can't see on an iPhone or on a tablet, they don't know about. And I think there's a real gap to be closed, and I think it's also one of the efforts we're doing here is trying to talk to schools, get them hands-on, invite them so that they create their curiosity, not giving the image of what I said before, the IT guy, boring work in the basement with old technology.
Time is over.
That time is over, and I think creating that image of, I think doing these studies and going into that domain of work and of IT is really contributing to the future. It makes a difference these days. And it will make a difference in the future. It will be, I think, more than ever a key area. So I think if, as a young person, if you want to make a difference, it's a good area to start working in.
Don't become a doctor.
I wouldn't say that. I think we still need doctors, but I say become an IT-savvy doctor. That would be great.
That would be great. And with that, Koen, I would like to thank you for your time, for your insights, Hendrik, for sharing all your ideas, visions, and so on. It was really a pleasure.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.